We're back to busy season. The week is over. It's time for a weekend feast of cricket. 4 games coming up. 8 franchises will be under the spotlight. And it all starts with a double header with the one franchise everyone's looking to finally put a point on the board. That's the home team, home in the sense of geography, but they will be at the Brabant Stadium up against a brand new franchise in the Lucknow Super Giants. That is game number 1 in the afternoon from the Brabant Stadium. And after that, in the evening, all the action shifts about 483 meters down the road, down Marine Drive to the Wankhede Stadium, where it's going to be another big one, Delhi taking on Bangalore. Before we meet our expert panel, let's quickly remind you of the points table and where things stand as far as the teams are concerned. 4 teams that are going to play today. Mumbai firmly at the bottom. They need to start acting very soon. Lucknow somewhere in the middle after an early success. And if you have a look at Delhi and Bangalore, both teams will be desperate to jump into that log jam that we are calling number 6 at the moment. But now let's come to the first game at hand. This is going to be Mumbai at the Brabant Stadium taking on the Lucknow Super Giants. Quick update of the toss. Mumbai have won the toss. And surprise, surprise, they have, no, there's no surprise. They've continued under normal circumstances. They will bowl first. Let's meet our panel. Pommie Mbangwa in the house. Welcome, Pommie. Michael's already been here. He's a veteran of the season. Pommie, good to have you on board.
Yeah, good to be here. I was here a couple of days ago, actually, with Gaurav. So, yeah, second time on, and good to be back.
Oh, you sneaked in there without telling me. Fair enough. So Pommie's already been here. But Michael, how big is this for Mumbai? I know we've been saying it from after 3 losses, then 4, then 5, but now it just has to happen.
Yeah, afternoon, Gautam, Pommie. I've moved rooms. I've come into a different room today, but I've brought my little tech team that have been with me, Pommie. You don't know, I've got this little tech team that sit beside me and tell me a few numbers. Mumbai are struggling. That's what they've told me this morning. Have to win, clearly. They'll probably jiggle up the pack somewhat because they're desperate for that first victory. No surprise that Rohit has decided to field first. Always a bit alarmed by that in a day game. When the dew plays a factor at night, completely understand it. But in the day games, when you get on a good pitch, I'm a bit old school, Pommie. Probably you're the same. Get runs on the board and try and defend it with your spinners. So we'll see how Rohit and his team go on today. But it's a must-win game.
Yeah, I mean, let's forget the mathematics right now. Rohit putting on a brave face at the toss, talking about no external pressure. Pommie, there is a bit.
Not just a bit. My goodness, 5 in a row you've lost, and you're supposed to be this champion. In fact, you are this champion side. And in a time where you're trying to get what your best 11 is, it's quite clear that they're not sure who their best 11 is. 1, by results, but 2, also by the fact that they keep chopping and changing. They're unsure whether they've got, the right tools on the field. I think if we were to go round and we ask Mumbai fans and perhaps guys who are just watching the games every day like us and say, could you have picked a different side for each of those games? And would you have a different first 11 to what they seem to have? I think you'd get many different answers. And I think it spells a bit of confusion as to what to do. But the confusion is terrible because, hey, it's like going into quicksand. And let's hope that they find the answer today.
Yeah, what is the lineup today? That's the question we've asked from game number 1. And every time we've said, oh, he's not playing. And it's been a different he each time around. Today, once again, the question that was being asked, will Tim David find his way back in? Who will be the 4th overseas, if any? The answer is they are playing 4 overseas. So let's answer, or let's unravel the mystery. Joining Kyron Pollard, Diwal Brevis and Tymon Mills will be Fabian Allen, who comes in for Basil Thampi. So they've kept Murugan Ashwin in. They've got a 3-pronged pace attack. Pollard, if they want to use him. And then they've got Fabian Allen and Murugan Ashwin, Michael.
Yeah, I'm surprised Tim David didn't get a game. I mean, I've seen lots of him. And when you sign a player like Tim David, you've got to kind of take the rough with the smooth. He'll have 1 or 2 games where he doesn't have a huge amount of impact, and all of a sudden he'll win a game from nowhere. So I'm surprised by that. You look at the core strength of the side, and there's 5 outstanding T20 experts, if you like, in Bumrah, Pollard, Ishan Kishan, Rohit Sharma, Suryakumar Yadav. That's the kind of core of the Mumbai Indians. They've just not arrived yet. They've not arrived this year and produced any kind of consistency, particularly that opening partnership. And until that gets going, it's very hard for the rest because you're playing catch-up. So you can kind of swap around your overseas pros, but that Indian core in particular has to be more consistent. They have the young star of the tournament, and I'm sure Pommie will agree with me, probably the young star of the world game in Delwell Brevis, who just looks a phenomenal player. Saw him in the Under-19 World Cup, saw him play a little sparkling innings in the last game. So they have that little gem in the pack, but you can't rely on an 18-year-old. You need that core strength, and particularly Indian players, to produce a little bit more consistency.
100%. I think it's fantastic that, day after day, we're watching young, talented guys. And essentially, in all the squads, as you look around, there are these guys who you think, they're going to be wonderful players if they kind of carry on their trajectory. But in terms of Mumbai, Delwell Brevis, it's kind of unfair to expect that he's going to be the one that's going to win you games as a champion side. In fact, he should be leaning on others and kind of taking his lead from others. As it stands, it seems he's one of the front runners. And when you look at that side, you're kind of looking with expectation from the youngster. So it kind of tells us where they are. The engine room for their batting side is not 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's 5, 6, and 7, because that's where you win games. And your Tim David, Kieron Pollard, all-rounder somewhere down there. And I suppose you'd call them all-rounders. Tim David with his nude offies, I'll call them. He can bowl them. He fields pretty well. It probably is another Kieron Pollard. And if you have that, imagine you can play both those in your side and, try and have them make an impact. No score then becomes too big. Assuming they have some sort of form somewhere along the line, of course. But yeah, I think it's too much expected of a youngster, and they're looking too high up in the order, whereas further down, 5, 6, 7, that's your engine room, and that's where things are not happening for you.
Yeah, I mean, he could be the future. I mean, Pommie's suggesting there about playing together. It could also be a long-term replacement. But Michael, for now, you really have to look at the short term as well as the long term. Maybe Delwell Brevis is your long term. That's great. But for Tim David, I mean, he needs to hit the ground running, but he can only do that if he's in the 11.
Yeah, absolutely. Fabian Allen comes in, bowls his left arm spin, so maybe they think there's going to be a little bit of tweak there. Tim David's a player that I would buy time with. I wouldn't be swapping him and changing him. I just think he's got an amazing ability to go out there in the last few hours and just cause chaos. He's that kind of player. He hits sixes for fun. Kieron Pollard's an interesting one. I mean, the dynamics, the politics. It's clear that it's quite hard for him to be dropped. He's obviously got it in his contract that he plays every game, but I don't believe it. When you've lost 5 on the trot, you forget what's gone in the past. You forget what the contracts say. You just arrive at that venue and go, what is the best 11 to win this game? Our first game that we need to win. Forget the first 5. And if that means that you don't play Pollard, you don't play Pollard. If that means you don't play Fabian Allen, you just don't play whoever the kind of history tells you that you should really play because you want to be loyal and consistent. You just pick your best 11. And I think Kieron Pollard's incredible what he's done, but there is a time when you have to kind of say, okay, is there someone just that could do something slightly better than you're doing at the minute? And maybe that could have been the case today.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a case of, and it happens a lot, doesn't it, Mick, where you have a player and you think he'll come good. When it comes to the crunch, you'll come good. And then you get to a point where you think, well, this is the point of no return. And maybe that's the case. And I mean, it's not just Kieron Pollard, the skipper as well. You're looking at the skipper and you're going, oh, Rohit, give it to us. Where's what you normally do? Unfortunately, there are too many of those questions. In a time past, if things didn't work batting-wise, they would work bowling-wise because the bowling side was as good. That's why they're a champion side. I believe in letting go Trent Bolt, a big mistake.
Yeah.
Because rescue things for them. It turned up, and you could then unleash Bumrah in one-over spells, or at points in the game where you kind of needed to bring it back, or you needed to assert yourself a bit more. Now, yes, Tamal Mills is a top player, top bowler, England bowler, but he's just settling in. It doesn't quite have what Bolt has, and hasn't been around the setup as much as Bolt has. So, yeah, tough one for them, because they're trying to plug holes in many different places.
And Bumrah's been a bit of a lone ranger this season, in the sense that, I mean, you talk about cliches in the game, but bowlers hunting in pairs has been one of those that makes a lot of sense. It's not just said for fun. And this is what we're seeing with Bumrah, kind of on his own. Extra responsibility on his shoulders, Michael. Started first match, we said, okay, none for 43 is an anomaly, comes back well. But after that, he hasn't really continued the comeback.
No, I mean, I guess the 3 for 17 against Rajasthan was a standout, but, his economies have been fine. When you're bowling at pretty much around 8, you're doing very well in terms of economy. If I'm playing the Mumbai Indians, what do you say to your batting unit? Just see off Bumrah. Don't cause too much stress against Bumrah. I think most batting units around the IPL will fancy hitting the other 4 bowlers a lot further. So they'll just say about Bumrah, don't risk too much. If you hit him for 25, 28 and he's 4 overs and he only gets 1 for or none for, absolutely fine with that. But don't risk too much against Bumrah, because he doesn't have, as Pommie says, the Trent Bolt at the other end that's kind of forcing the issue as well. He has some good bowlers, but so far bowlers that are just trying to find their way. Someone like Tamal Mills is a really high-class performer, but as an individual arriving to play in the IPL, playing for the Mumbai Indians, a huge franchise, a franchise that has won the event so many times, you're under so much pressure. Once you've had one game that it's not been quite to the standard that you expect, the next game becomes even more important. And I get a sense from Mumbai this year, even when I talked about the Indian players, they're all just looking after their own little games, because they're so desperate to look after their own performance. They're not really looking at, look at the Sunrisers yesterday. They play as a team. You can see that everything is about every individual producing their roles within the team framework. I think Mumbai this year have been a team that have played very much like individuals trying to look after their own little worlds. And it's very hard to suddenly go, right, we're playing as a team. It'll take probably an individual bit of brilliance from either a bowler or a batter today to get them over the line. And then they're away, and then you can start collectively working as a team. But it's very, very difficult when you're losing, that players, and Pommie, you'd have been there, players start looking inward. How do I look after my own world rather than the kind of team world? And that's when it becomes a very, very precarious dressing room, when players are starting to look after their own kind of games rather than the collective teams.
And we can't play it down. We can't play down the fact that this tournament is huge. I mean, when Rohit turns up at the toss and he says, yeah, we don't worry about external pressure, the fact that he goes there tells you they're worried about it. And he's trying to kind of make sure they're not. He's trying to get them out of that place. But it doesn't matter when each of the blokes who are in that Mumbai franchise, who are big players, lie down at night, look up at the ceiling, they know that because they've been around a long time, because they're star players, there's this expectation, and to this point they haven't delivered. Champion players often are able to muster it at the right time, and they'll be able to deliver something. As I say, let's hope it's this time, because it can't go on. If it does, then it kind of falls down rapidly.
I'll just stay with you, Pommie, for a second, because one of the players we didn't mention, and in our preview yesterday, we were like, well, almost certainly we'll see him with this particular pitch, the way it was playing yesterday, and that is Riley Meredith. We wanted them to inject a bit of pace. Rohit said just the opposite. We're trying to slow things down.
Yeah, and I get the thinking with regard to slowing things down. Often in a game, they look at a pitch, they think perhaps there's sufficient dryness there during the day. Dew's not going to come into the picture. So go with the slower bowler, take pace off, and it'll make things difficult for whoever's trying to whack the ball out the park. Fair enough. And you can't fault that thinking. But whatever you're thinking, however you construct the team, at the end of the day, what happens in terms of performance after that is what's going to decide whether it's kind of the right call or not. It also, as we said at the start, not sure. They could have gone with Meredith. He's all right with pace, but he also changes it up quite nicely. And as do most of these bowlers with their skills in 2020 cricket these days, they will look to change it up. And according to the surface, to the situation, they'll be able to utilize their skills of taking pace off the ball. I mean, Fabian Allen, good player. He's a good player. Let's not forget that. He too is an experienced 2020 cricketer. Yes, he doesn't turn the ball a great deal, but changes of pace and can smash it at the back end. Even though he bats sort of 8 and 9, can bat about 7 as well. So yeah, he's a good guy to bring in, and he could be one of those guys who can turn it around for them, because you get a chance, and when you get a chance in this tournament, you've got to use it. If you don't, then you're kind of sitting on the bench again for a really long time.
Well, I can tell you Fabian Allen's also played as high as number 4 for his franchise in the Caribbean Premier League. They used him well. There was one season he missed out completely. They missed him. He missed a flight. It was in 2020. He missed one flight and he was out of the entire tournament. And when he came back, they could see just why they missed him. So let's see how he fits into the Indian scheme of things. He's very much there in the 11. What about the Lucknow team? What have they done with their team in KL Rahul's 100th game in the tournament? And that's the only one change. The man who they weren't quite sure how to use, Krishnappa Gautam, who actually batted at that position, bowled really well. He goes out and they sort of come back to a more settled looking 11 with Manish Pandey slotting in at number 3. Michael, it looks, I mean, not that Gautam did much wrong, but that's where Manish Pandey probably belongs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's any surprise that they've gone back to Manish Pandey, but you know, it's all about the batting lineup. I thought they just over-tinkered in the last game, leaving Stoinis too far down the order, coming in at number 8. Yes, he got him close, but you know, if you brought him in a little bit sooner, he's a better player than just coming in the last 3 or 4 overs to strike it. He's a player that can get you hundreds in T20 cricket. So I thought they over kind of complicated the game. I would think they'll go back to a little bit of the basics, a more settled order. Players playing in their preferred position. I mean, Jason Holder went to number 4 in the last game as well from nowhere. Look, on paper, I think they look a really good team. Is KL Rahul, can he get into rhythm and form? We know with KL that he's such a good player that once he gets one score, he'll be very, very consistent. He got a gem of a delivery from Pommie's pal Trent Boult with an absolute beauty through the gate from around the wicket in his last outing. If you get a few of those balls, well, you're going to struggle. But he's too good a player not to have an impact. And that partnership at the top of the order is a really good one. And if it can start to fire, I could see Lucknow going quite far in this tournament if they get that combination working at the top.
Yeah, I think he's been done in with 2 Yorkers, if I remember. The other one was probably Natarajan. That got him another single-digit score. So 2 Yorkers from 2 of the best exponents. But yeah, I think that order is what we're talking about. Pommie, before I come to you, have a look at this quote from KL Rahul. And it's probably in disagreement with what Michael Vaughan just said. We have a lot of all-rounders, so we could shuffle the batting order a bit. We like to be unpredictable. The plan was to throw the bowlers up their lengths. We're a side that will continue to try being unpredictable in the coming games too. KL Rahul, Gautam Gambhir, Andy Flower, they've got that think tank going. It is a little bit volatile. I wonder if that's the solution for them.
Yeah. Also, what happens many a time is you get spoilt for choice, don't you? Because you've got too many tools, you kind of think you got to try and use them all. And that's what happens. I mean, if we think about where each player does the best, and that's basically how you've got to try and set a team up. And in terms of their acquisition of players, they did a fantastic job. I think they did a good job. If you go KL Rahul, Quinton de Kock, over many years, have they taken bowling attacks apart at the start of a game? And if you can do that, and one of them continues on, and both of those are able to do that. I mean, how many times does KL Rahul get to 100, right? He gets to 100 and at a serious strike rate. Say the same of Quinton de Kock. So don't worry about any of the tinkering and whatever. You put those guys together, Manish Pandey as well, walking in at 3, it's his position. Put him in there, and more times than not, if you just assign that as their role and away they go, I reckon because they're such good players, over the course of 14 games, they'd be able to win you many games. So, yeah, I think it's too many tools as far as I'm concerned, and so too much tinkering.
Yeah, I think sometimes, Gautam, that you get groups of, I guess, coaches, backroom staff members that are almost trying to reinvent the wheel, to try and prove that they can do something differently. T20 cricket, of all the formats, actually, is becoming very, very predictable. All the teams have all the same information. They all know the matchups against certain bowlers, certain batters. They all know all that information. So it is becoming very predictable in terms of what you expect. But teams that are successful generally have specific roles that they just stick to, and those players stay in those specific roles. I'll always allude to the way that the Sunrisers have turned their season around in the last 3 games, getting 3 wins. They've just stuck to a very simple role method. They've got Kane Williamson at the top. Once he gets out, they bring in Aidan Markham just to play the glue role. And around that, they've got a few firecrackers. I mean, it's T20 basics of what's been happening for many years. Yes, you have left-hand, right-hand combinations where you might throw a left-hander when there's a left-arm spin or a leg spinner to go with the spin. There's all sorts of scenarios where you can change your batting lineup for that kind of play. But what Lucknow did in the last game, I just thought was overcomplicating life. That was too many brains just getting together and going, we need to try something different. They were chasing down a target that was very chaseable without having to overcomplicate it. If you're chasing down 220 and you think, well, you know what, we've got to get so far ahead of the game and continue with that, now and again you have to throw in the odd player to kind of shake up the kind of batting lineup. But when you're chasing down a reasonable target that you should be comfortable getting, I don't see any reason to really tinker with the order too much.
Well, one thing's for sure, we know that today they will not be chasing. They will be setting a total for Mumbai, with Rohit Sharma having won the toss. And right at the top will be one of their foes. Quick recap, that is what's happened at the toss. But Quinton de Kock, Pommie, of course, he's been explosive at the top. But every time this season, somebody comes up against their old franchise, it's been interesting. Whether it's been Yuzvendra Chahal or Devdutt Padikkal or whoever it is. Today, Quinton de Kock v Mumbai is going to be interesting.
Yeah, many a time we say, oh, that doesn't matter, right? They say, oh, it's just another game, he's just, nah, it matters big time. Because there might well have been the conversations, will you retain me, will you not? Well, why didn't you choose me? I'd like to have been, it might have turned out better, the fact that a guy goes off to another franchise, and I mean monetarily. So it might have, it might not have, whatever the case may be. I wanted to stay. You kind of didn't think you didn't bid enough for me at the auction, whatever it is. And when it's your mates you're playing against, we'll call it bragging, right? But I tell you what, there's a sense of pride. There is a definite wanting to get one over your previous team. You don't want to turn up there and you're gone. See, we didn't lose anything. You want to make sure that you put one on them. And it doesn't matter who Quinton de Kock plays. But today, I reckon he'll be going that bit harder. Sometimes you try a bit too hard and you get nothing. But I tell you what, he'll be wanting to make sure that he puts one over Mumbai.
He's not one to say too much, Michael. I mean, we've even had an instance of Yuzvendra Chahal coming out and saying, well, actually, I would have loved to have been there. You guys sort of didn't keep me. You said you would bid for me, said all that before the game and then played against them. Quinton's not the type to talk, but he'll let the bat do the talking, I guess, Michael.
Yeah, I don't know him at all, but, he seems to be a really good guy to have around the team. I think he's quite good fun. Clearly his game's at the highest level. That ability to strike early with the bat in hand. I think he's quite a smart wicket keeper as well. I think he gives the captain plenty of good angles, probably some really good tactical tips as well. So look, these franchises can't keep everyone. That's why, once you get to the auction stage and the swapping and changing happens, it's like the American sports, that they don't want one franchise to just dominate for long periods. These auctions every 2 or 3 years just shake up the whole tournament. 2 new teams now, both new teams look very well prepared, look very well bought. And then obviously the better teams, the most powerful sides in the likes of Chennai and Mumbai, from what I see, have just gone down in the pack because they've not had quite as good an auction as some of the other sides. And some of these other sides, like, Delhi, you look at Delhi and the way that they're playing under Ricky Ponting, they look like they've been strategically very, very clever. Rajasthan, I think, have had a tremendous auction. They look like they've really bought well. And just maybe, I'm saying Mumbai and Chennai just took their eye off the ball and just thought, we're Mumbai, we're Chennai. We know how to win this tournament. But, in sport, we're seeing it in the Premier League over here, Pommie. If you take your eye off the ball, and you only have to look at Manchester United. They will say they're the biggest club in the world. They're not anymore because they took their eye off the ball about 7 years ago.
Don't go there, Pommie. Don't go there, Pommie. We don't have another hour at hand once you start him off. But I'll ask you one pointed question before we get into our quiz question for the day. Are Kolkata missing Shubman Gill? Yes. Are Bangalore missing Yuzvendra Chahal? Yes. Are Mumbai missing Trent Bolt? Definitely. But in that same vein, are Mumbai going to miss Quinton de Kock as much?
No, look, I don't. Even if he puts them to the sword, no, I don't think it's the wrong thing for Quinton de Kock to not have been retained. I don't think so. As Mick says, you can't have everybody. You have to make a choice, and it's kind of 3 or 4 you can keep. So that's that. For me, you want to bolster the top. Make sure you've got a guy up at the top, and you've got the skipper there. You've got Ishan Kishan, who can fit right up at the top or at 3 or 4, so he can play there. You've got Surya Kumar Yadav, and he's magical, 3, 4, and maybe 5 sometime. Then you've got Pollard, big hitter. Yeah, you've done well to get those back in there. And then you've got Bumrah. For me, though, I need both ends to be working. So 1 up top, 1 in the middle, and 2 bowlers. They win you games. And if they went the other way, they thought they could get him back perhaps in the auction. They couldn't get him back. So someone needs to step up to help Bumrah.
All right. Well, if Joy had asked a quiz question yesterday, who will bowl the opening over for Mumbai? I'm not sure too many people would have said Tilak Verma. That is the answer to quiz question number 1. It's Tilak Verma opening the bowling for Mumbai. Rohit promised. Let's slow it down. He's keeping his promise. Second quiz question of the day actually comes from Joy. And let's find out quickly what it is. This is it. Get your pens and papers out. Actually, just get your devices out. #Cricbuzz Live. Which distinguished person not associated with cricket actually witnessed the last test held on a matting wicket? Wow, it could be politics. It could be absolutely anything. Distinguished person. That's all he says. Joy doesn't say distinguished about too many people. So maybe that could be a hint. Get your answers back in #Cricbuzz Live. Of course, we know that when it comes to Sunday, the one thing Joy does best is join Match Party. A lot of fun. Get on to Cricbuzz Plus, subscribe to it, and be a part of a lovely watch-along throughout both the games. For now, just about 20 seconds left. Order of business, gentlemen, a number for Mumbai, 3 digits preferably. Michael Vaughan, how many are Lucknow going to get in their 20 overs?
Well, let me just communicate with my team down here. They were spot on yesterday. We're going back to 160.
All right, fair enough.
Day game, bit of spin. They're saying 160 today.
Yeah, I'm going 177.
Well, 177, fair enough. It could just be. Could this be Mumbai's day? Could this be Mumbai's day? I'm just for a change. I'll low ball. I've always highballed. I've always lost. I'm just going to low ball. I'm just going to sneak in at 151. Sneak in at 151. Go hard up top. Little bit of impact from Mumbai. Bumrah picks up a couple.
Well bowled, Bumrah.
Well bowled, Bumrah. There you go. It's got to be that. It's got to be that. 151 to 177. That's a big range. But all it means is we have a cracker in store. That's game number 1, Delhi-Bangalore at night. We'll be back in the 10th over on Cricbuzz Combox. For now, for this first of several shows on Super Saturday from Pommie, Michael, and myself, it's goodbye.